Psychologist Dr Arthur Cassidy. Yes, let's psychoanalyse this psycho, Dr Arthur. Is Vladimir Putin an actual psychopath?
Well, I have observed Putin for very many years, and we can see from a close scientific analysis of his personality traits that he does exhibit quite a number of psychopathic traits. There's a pathology of evil that seems to run through most of his identification. So we take, for example, what we call the dark triad. And these are traits that President Putin seems to exhibit over in many, many years, even at an international level. We see narcissism, we see what we call dark narcissism, where there's an exceeding focus on self-importance and control. We also see in many of his speeches, even with his own cabinet, we see a very strong controlling factor here, an obsession with his own ego identity, as we call it. And so we have Machiavellianism creeping in here into everything he says and does, through all his narrative, Patrick. We see in all his political ideology, we see a strong form of control of Machiavellianism. So three core traits. The psychopathology one is the worst.
Now, there's been a mixed response to some people saying that Vladimir Putin, they're drawing similarities between him and Hitler. And indeed, there's one on the front page of one of our national newspapers this morning. Are there any similarities?
Well, there are, but there are also many differences. Every unique human being is very, very different. But there are commonalities. There is a control, there is the self-ego, and he's the high-octane ego defense that he has. But there's a form of emotional dysregulation that both he and Hitler also exhibited. So this is where emotions do not follow rationality. Emotions become dysregulated, they become highly impulsive, and therefore people like Hitler and people like President Putin tend to ignore all forms of logic and rational, especially moral reasoning.
I think he enjoys taking lives, because look at the way that he's trying to dispose of certain people in this country. Indeed, he did. Alexander Litvinenko, polonium in the tea. Then you've got the Skripals as well with Novichok. He's also done it, frankly, probably all around the world. I think you see what the Russian military is doing at the moment. They are shelling areas that are inhabited basically just by civilians. Do you think he actually enjoys killing people?
I think there is an underlying what we call pathology here, that there is enjoyment because they get high psychological payoffs from the more deaths, the more blood, the more murder, where they demoralize people. So there is this binary thing, it's all or nothing. And so in his personality, we see a control freak here as someone totally devoid of his own ego and his own attention to reality. So the more deaths they get, very much like the pathology behind trolls, Patrick, where the more people we injure, the more people we demean, because they lack remorse. Psychopathy in his mindset is about the lack of remorse. There's no empathy whatsoever with the Ukrainian people. And remember, we've got to remember, Patrick, these Ukrainian people are human. They are entitled to democracy. They're entitled to be who they want to be. They're entitled to dignity and to self-respect and to self-determinism. But this particular president is one who lacks that empathy. This is why gaining more power, gaining more control. And we must remember, by the way, that he is persistently driven by these power motives, which come from an underlying Marxist-Leninist background in his youth. And remember, he had quite a difficult upbringing. I remember also doing a radio program sometime the time of the meeting with the Russian-German, done in the Russian-German conference that we had in Serbia. And I remember at that time, there was a control factor. There was political contempt, and it's political contempt that's driving his underlying evil and evil desires.
OK, all right. Look, a lot of people in my inbox now, gbviews at gbnews.uk, keep those coming in. We will go through to those throughout the show, are saying someone with his psychology cannot stop. The only way to stop him is to take him out. Is that true?
Yes, there would be the underlying reasoning that this man is dangerous. He doesn't live in the contemporary world of political ideology. The Russian people are entitled. There's a brain drain. We know there's a brain drain. Young Russian people are so highly intelligent, contributing to international economies and world affairs. And these people are entitled. There is entitlement here. They are entitled to be who they want to be. But we cannot have a president lurking in the background who's trying to retard their high level of intelligence, scientific progress, and education systems. This is a president who's well out of touch with today's world. And there's no place in our contemporary political society for psychopathy.
No. And I think one of the things that's interesting as well is, for me, is actually a bit of this led by fear. Has he got fear? He's got fear of NATO on his borders. He's got fear of getting old and maybe not achieving everything that he wanted to. He's got the fear that any rampant dictator must have, which is that the day he steps down, his successor could well lock him up and accuse him of absolutely anything. Is he actually led a bit by fear, or is he just completely devoid of that emotion whatsoever?
Actually, you are quite right. He is actually obsessed with fear. He fears who will take over from Putin, and he doesn't trust. I see from an analysis of all of his work, he doesn't trust any of the potential forthcoming presidents. He is who he is, and it's mine. Whatever is mine is mine. He is a political predator. What is mine is mine, and what yours is also mine. So there is this underlying lack of trust. And there's a fear that whoever will take over the current, what would have been the Soviet Union at one time, that we're having a forward-looking, optimistic president who's diplomatic and will work for the people and give them the life that they're entitled to. There is an underlying fear behind that.
If he gets Ukraine, and he does roll the tanks in properly, and as indeed he has, really, and he actually wins, and the West does nothing, apart from maybe impose some financial sanctions, does he carry on?
I think he will, because he seems to devoid of any reasoning about economic sanctions. He knows they're there. Remember, he's got a PhD in economics, and he's a very, very clever, highly intelligent guy. But this is not what drives him. Power and militaristic power and political ideology and opportunism is about getting what he wants. So he is very much what we call a political predator. Predators will get whatever they want and will take out of the way anything that blocks their aims and goals and targets. So I believe that he will actually keep persisting in this very warped form of identity that he has.
There we go. Thank you very much for your time. Psychologist Dr Arthur Cassidy. I was really, really keen to try to psychoanalyse Vladimir Putin because I want to really understand this guy, if indeed it's possible. And you know what? It looks like what most of us are thinking is actually true. I think he probably is a dangerous psychopath, devoid of a lot of emotion, but ultimately at its core, he's a very, very scared man.